Hello.
Hi guys.
Hey everybody. It's Jenny
And Betsy.
and we're here for the tall and the short of it today. We'll
I'm
wait and
moving
hopefully
the wrong place.
Yeah, we have our fireside chat going on today. Do you guys like it?
Nice and cozy today.
Good. So hopefully a few people will be popping on here with us shortly and participate in the conversation today. Our topic, we're wrapping up social skills this month. We only have today and tomorrow left, right?
It's crazy.
Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
Yes.
So we need to talk about next month before we end this today, I suppose. Yeah, we probably should give you a preview. Maybe that's what I'll post tomorrow. I'll post the December preview
Okay.
tomorrow. But today's topic is the when your child does not have any friends.
Yeah.
So this is a topic that comes up a lot.
Yes.
And so I'll let you kind of talk about it teacher perspective wise, where you hear that.
Well, we definitely hear it, I would say, the most like when we're in a case conference and maybe we ask like a parent what the parent's concerns are. And in all honesty, if that is a area that you have, as a parent, you have concerns, definitely bring it up, because what I have found is that it's all about maybe perception, because the way, a child may say, is coming home every day. Well, no, I don't, parents might say, well, what friend did you play with today? And then they say, I don't have friends. And, but then once we're able to talk to them, because we see, during recess or playtime, social time at school, we're like, they are with this one particular child every time, or they play with this group of kids. And so that's one thing, that just because your child is coming home and saying, I don't have any friends, doesn't mean that they don't. So it's always important to talk to the teacher,
Right.
Whether it be classroom teacher, special ed teacher.
Yeah, kids with disabilities sometimes confuse what that even means a lot, because sometimes they may think, well, nobody comes to my house, so I don't have any friends. They may be thinking that is what makes someone your friend. Or nobody wants to play what I want to play, so they're not my friends.
Well, or maybe they just haven't had a conversation where the person, you don't usually go and say, I'm your friend.
Right.
And you're my friend.
Right.
Like, you don't have that
direct instruction.
and sometimes they need that. They need that to be said. They need someone to say, this is your friend because you play with them every day, or you sit with them at lunch, or
Now, another thing that happens, though, is sometimes we overgeneralize friends for them, and then that can confuse the issue, too. So, like, I know at some elementary schools, they may come over the intercom and say, welcome to school, friends. And they talk about everyone. We don't talk that way to our friends. We don't do this with our friends. So we call every kid in the school your friends. And so then it's like, well, then if they see that a kid doesn't like them or doesn't want to play with them or whatever, then they assume, well, we're all supposed to be friends, so then we don't have friends. I don't know. So like I said, but we can unintentionally confuse that issue sometimes by how we word things too. So just keeping that in mind.
And I was telling Jenny, I do the same thing, because I often call the students in my classroom like, oh, he's being such a good friend to you today. And but
tell your friends about what. I'm referring to the whole class.
We do, but and so,
which that would be ideal if we could make all of the kids friends with each other, but we all know in reality that's not the case in most situations. So but sometimes they really don't. And I guess that's the part we want to talk about today, is when is it that if your child really doesn't have friends, or you have students in your class that really don't have friends, there's probably 4 reasons why that might be the case. And so we're going to kind of go through those 4 today, and people can chime in as they jump on if they have examples or comments about that or questions. because, like I said, these are the 4 things we find to be the biggest barriers to kids making friends. So the first one is just being able to initiate a conversation.
Yep.
I mean, if you can't initiate a conversation and continue to have a conversation with someone, turn taking is a big barrier for many kids. They have a lot of stuff they want to say, but they don't want to reciprocate with that other child. Hi, Brandy. So, or even with an adult sometimes.
Yeah.
So many disabilities have language impairments or speech, and sometimes it's because you can't understand them.
Yes.
It's hard to have a conversation if they have a speech impairment. And the other kids are always going, what? Or I don't understand what he's saying. So that can impede them making friends. We find that the higher functioning that child with a speech impairment is, though, they find a way to communicate. But the ones maybe who are lower functioning in the classroom may not be able to figure that out, and then that can cause frustration, which can lead to maladaptive behavior, which we don't want.
Right.
So,
Well, and I found too, if they, especially like maybe beginning kindergarten, they all, they're new, younger, just starting that. But as they get a little older, the kids that have been around them more, if they do struggle with their with a speech impairment, a lot of times their friends are actually their peers.
just like siblings.
Yeah, their peers are who can sometimes interpret what they're saying.
Absolutely. But initiating a conversation, especially a school appropriate
Yes.
conversation for some kids, kids who with emotional disabilities or kids who are exposed to a lot of things in the home environment that may be a little too adult for them to be around. They come to school and they want to talk about those things, and then the other kids are like, what is he doing? You know?
Or even recognizing, this kind of doesn't necessarily go with just conversation, some other areas, but starting a conversation with a peer that they're going to want to talk about, because that a lot of times maybe a student with autism, they have their I want to talk, their passion, and if another student doesn't know about that, they're not necessarily going to want to sit and talk to them about it.
Right. If you've got a second grader who's obsessed with the Titanic and he knows everything about the Titanic, and he starts talking to another kid about it, and that kid has never even heard of the Titanic, they're probably going to be very disengaged in that conversation.
So working on not just initiating, knowing how to initiate that conversation, but also choosing an appropriate topic to start off with.
Absolutely. And sometimes we have to really support that for a long time until they're able to do that. Lots of picture cues and prompts and scripts. And again, video modeling can come back into play, or social stories. So initiating conversation is a big one. And that's, like I said, if they don't have conversations with other kids, it's really hard to make friends.
Yes.
So that's number 1. You want to do number 2?
All right. The next one would be interpreting the social situation that they're in, or what's going on around them. Because if they're responding to what's happening inappropriately, it makes other students uncomfortable. They don't understand, how to engage with the child.
Do they know when it's appropriate to talk or not? Are they interrupting other things going on? Do they understand you're supposed to be quiet during this time?
Well, or even like if again one of them on down also talked about turn taking, but turn taking, like, okay, I said something, I asked you a question, I need to give you a chance to respond to me.
Sure. Also, a lot of kids in the spectrum may interpret a situation very wrong. So I had a student back when I taught middle school who would come crying into my class telling me other kids were laughing at her or talking about her. When I would go out to confront these students, they'd be like, we weren't even talking about her at all. We were just talking and laughing about something totally different. But her perception as she walked past them was that it must be about her. So sometimes their perception isn't always reality in those situations. And so we have to teach them that you can't assume those kinds of things, because especially when they're older kids, you can talk to them about your autism sometimes makes you perceive things incorrectly. So before you jump to conclusions and really talking about that concept, you need to size up the situation, see if there are multiple possibilities about what's going on, and then of course report it if you feel like you're being threatened or bullied or whatever. But a lot of times we will get bullying reports from kids with disabilities, and when we go actually investigate the situation, those other kids were either not even talking about them or not referring to them, or it was about something totally different, or even crazier, sometimes it was that student on the spectrum or that student with a disability was actually really annoying them, and they ignored it for as long as they could and then finally told them to stop. And that's when the kid was like, well, they're bullying me.
Well, and you were talking about when you said when the child is old enough for you to be able to say, okay, we've talked about your autism or what. There are other disabilities. I know I've talked with a student that I had previously who was blind, low vision, about social, understanding social situations, because they don't always, it's not as easy for them. And
to pick up on it.
That's something definitely in different, other disabilities, just that's definitely, when they're old enough, you can have those frank conversations and say, okay, you're not able to see what's happening, or
right. Well, and then when you talk about kids, sometimes even on the other end of maybe lower cognitive abilities, kids with intellectual disabilities, they get taken advantage of where they think kids are their friends when they're not, and they're being used or taken advantage of. So we have to really pay attention to those situations too, because those other kids can be talking them into doing things that they shouldn't be doing, or taking money from them, or things like that, which we hope our kids don't do, but we know it happens. So we just have to be very vigilant about that kind of stuff when we have a kid who has a cognitive impairment and they're telling us, oh, these kids are my friends, and we know that is not the case. We have to really investigate those situations and make sure they're not being taken advantage of. So we've done initiate conversation and interpret social situations. Third is being able to interact with other kids in a positive way. Now, when I say that, what I'm talking about is just having lack of coping skills when things don't go your way. Either because you think that, well, I did all of these things you told me to do, and now they don't want to play with me. And then they react by screaming or hitting or taking something from them, or I know you see that a lot at this level. In the primary level. Where you teach them what to do if they want to get to, you can ask them if they will share the toy, or you can ask.
Well, and that's it. They often too, they'll say, well, I asked and they told me no. Well, they can. That's allowed.
Yes. So, just because somebody doesn't answer you the way you wanted doesn't mean they're not your friend. So, they can take that as, he won't let me do whatever I want to do, so he's not my friend.
I actually, just had one say the other day, he's not being nice. And I said, well, why? I asked him if I could play with that, and he said no. I'm like, that's not being mean. That's, you asked. And it's just like with me as a teacher. I never ask, would you come do this? because
they could say no.
They can say no. You don't ask. You know.
Say, I need you to.
You say this. I need you to come do this.
Don't ask a question you don't want the answer to.
And but it's like, if you ask a question, there's more than one response. So
I guarantee you, your emotional disability kids will tell you straight up. So, how many times do I have to tell you this? 14, 15.
I think, yes. I haven't heard that at this level, but I've heard it.
Middle school for sure.
Well, and I think too, you talked about like that lack of coping. It's, instead of being, I think I see a lot of times, instead of being, playing a game can be very hard. Because instead of,
if you're not winning,
that's very, very difficult. And actually, I think a couple weeks ago, I sent you a game. I was like, oh, check this out. It's a game where you win everybody would win or
cooperative
lose,
games are a huge thing out there right now.
as a team.
Lots of different, in the game stores and places like that, you can buy cooperative games where everyone who plays is working towards a goal together, and you win all together if you meet the goal. And
that to me is just a good way to start that game playing process, in a sense of, especially with a student that struggles with that, because when you have a student that is maybe competitive, which gets in, I always want to be I always have to be the winner. I have to be doing something better than you. When you're looking at that kind of thing, you're not going to get a lot of positive interactions.
Well, and when you see kids who have that mindset, either they might have a lot of anxiety when it comes to perfectionism, or not wanting others to perceive them as stupid or not as good as other people.
Failure is a very scary.
Afraid to fail.
Yeah, that is a very.
If they're not even going to put themselves in a situation where they could fail.
Yeah.
So you'll get refusal for things that they think they could possibly fail at.
Yes.
Hi, Missy. So that one, also trauma can really be a player when it comes to interacting positively with other kids. Kids in a environment where they have come from trauma, whether it was recent or not. So a lot of families that foster or things like that will take in kids who have been through a lot of trauma, and then they will not have positive interactions with other kids due to either attachment issues or they've never had anyone be supportive for them, or that kind of stuff. So a lot of their screaming, cussing, lashing out behaviors have a lot to do with the trauma they've been through, and again, a lack of coping skills for how to do that in a positive manner. So a lot of teaching has to be put into that one when you have a kid that is doing that. And a lot of understanding and not punishing.
Yes.
A consequence is one thing, but punishment is definitely not the way to go when you have a kid from trauma, because they don't care about that.
And guys, I was telling Jenny as we were working, kind of writing up our little notes for today, I said we need a whole month on trauma, because we are just have been learning quite a bit about it ourselves. Learned so much more.
What you think you should do is most of the time not what you should do.
And what you maybe consider trauma and what you hadn't thought about putting in that category is
for sure.
So that's something that I want to talk about at least soon. So
definitely. I mean, probably early next year sometime we'll be doing that for sure.
Seems crazy to say.
I know, and
when you say early next year, it's like that's
I know.
So far away.
So we've done the first 3 now. We've got 1 left.
Listening to others, and I'll be honest, I think we probably all struggle with that as well.
Everybody does,
because we often listen to respond instead of listening to understand, or we're always waiting on our turn. We can be a little,
for sure,
selfish with it.
Well, and lots of barriers when it comes to disabilities. Why they never listen? They're not. I've said this 500 times. Well, they have a lot of things going on executive function wise that probably are preventing them from getting all the pieces. Whether they have poor working memory, whether they have slow processing speed, poor attention. Maybe they're autistic and their point of view does not allow them to see it from your way. They're very black and white and or concrete, where they can't think in the abstract if you need them to. Or
they did listen, but they don't know what, it doesn't make sense to them.
Language impairment. Yes. They look in deer in headlights because they just didn't know the words coming out of your mouth. Kids with hearing impairments that aren't totally deaf may miss things here and there, and then they're confused about why everybody's reacting the way they are right now, or things like that. But that whole trying to one up, anytime anyone says something, you want to dominate that conversation. You've taught them good conversation skills, but now they just want to dominate. And
Yeah.
oh, I've got a better story than that, or I've got this, but
And I mean, in all honesty, we're talking about kids, guys. Think about lots of adults.
You know adults that
Yes.
are like that, don't you?
Yeah.
Absolutely, you do. So teaching kids that when you do that, that actually turns people off from wanting to be your friend. So you just have to know when it's appropriate and who you can say those things to. And sometimes they make it up just because they don't want to have somebody else have a better story than them.
Oh yes.
So
Yeah.
helping them understand when it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
And when it's not. It's usually not.
Sorry, we talk about this stuff and just so many situations pop in your head.
Oh,
and
I know.
You're like, oh, I remember
know.
that, oh, that, and that.
For sure.
So,
we, like I said, if you have books or resources or really great curriculum or programs, I posted a great book today on the timeline. If you didn't see it yet, you could check it out. That I definitely want to buy it. It's on my list now of purchases for the professional library. But I looked at the table of contents there, and it just looks fabulous because all the lessons are written already like social stories.
Yeah.
So how easy will it be then for you to take the pieces you need and make those into charts with the kids, or use those as scripts for video modeling, or there just seems to be, and so many ideas, things that they broke down, such a task analysis that they broke down into little pieces, parts. And there's an entire unit on making friends in that book. So I was like, oh, look at that.
Yeah. Well, and we also talked about, like, Jenny was where, like, if it's all, obviously children, we talked about the different areas that could be barriers, but every child's deficit is different. And so you had said, I think I would start with this, and so maybe that would be important to share.
Is you want to really assess where's the barrier for this particular child. If they're really struggling to make friends, where's the barrier, and what's the worst, what's the big thing right now that's keeping them from having more friends, and let's target that, and let's really focus on that and reward them when they're doing the things we ask them to do. And like I said, just as you're teaching these skills, you have to just keep hyper vigilant about the fact that they're not usually doing these things on purpose. It's because they don't know what else to do.
And a great place, I mean, okay, outside of the school, a great place to start with this is siblings. Because chances are they interact very similarly with their siblings as they do with their peers. And so start with the siblings, and that's, work on those skills at the home and how they interact with you. And, because that's something else, we said, where do we hear this a lot? In a conference, parents are seeing the same things. It's very rare for a parent to say, oh, they're
super social at home, but they have no friends at school.
Yeah, that's very rare.
It's usually across the board.
So,
and I think I posted an article also this month about, and just recently in the past few days, about finding an activity they can be involved in that will increase their chance of being able to have positive interactions with other kids. Martial arts seems to be a really big one for kids with disabilities, that they it teaches that discipline, and they see it as something cool, and that kind of thing. That seems to be a big one. Dance,
but also,
I think, is something good because it's individual.
But also, if they're not necessarily one to be physically, have the physical coordination, that's not their art classes.
Art.
A lot of, I know, I mean, here where we are, I know in Muncie, there's art classes.
Oh, yeah. Cornerstone Center for the Arts is fabulous. They're like a gem. If you don't have your kids doing stuff at Cornerstone Center for the Arts, it's awesome.
And
so many different
like,
things
I know
you
the
can
art class, my nephews did it, and it's a Saturday class, and it just runs.
And I know, like, for people that might be closer to Marion has one too. Marion Center for the Arts.
And I'm sure, like, I mean, in a lot of different communities and stuff, but, and things to even watch for, I know our school does, like, cookies and canvas and stuff like that for kids to have, like, kind of watch for that. So then if you're not out and meeting kids that your child goes to school with, that's a great way for you to do that.
Get them in an outside activity that goes with their strengths. I can think of one student who's just really great at chess. That's one of his passions. So when he goes to chess club, he's the most positively interactive student there, where in other situations he's not. So, I mean, that's something where you can, you know, if you can find that niche for them so they feel like they have friends in at least one area of their life while they're working in those skills, on those skills at school. So, okay, so let's talk about next month. Last month we did a poll where we asked you guys to choose between social skills and learning to read. So we went with social skills this month. So we're going to go back to that other topic, and we're going to do learning to read for December. And we're also going to throw in some things for the holidays. So like for behavior and sensory and stuff like that. So any cool activities that you could use for the holidays. And all of you out there that are SLPs or OTs or anything like that that want to put up ideas, please do for the holidays and add things to our timeline. Use this. We want guest posts as well. And I think that'd be really great. But we're going to go into learning to read this next time, and that affects kids of all ages, by the way. We mostly think about that at the primary level, but when kids struggle, we may still be learning to read all the way up into middle school. And even though the curriculum at that point has changed to reading to learn, you know, how do we deal with that, and what can we still do? So I think it's going to be a fun month. I'll put a preview, a little graphic preview up tomorrow of our topics, and we'll be delving into that. We're going to kind of break it down into the parts of learning to read as we do our 4. Are we still doing 4?
I think so.
I think we're still doing
because
4.
because
Chris is on Tuesday, so we're still going to do it.
Yeah, we just wouldn't be.
Yeah, either I'll go to her house or we'll do it like we did the week when we had the snow day. So, for sure.
Yeah. So, because we did discuss that.
So get ready for learning to read. Yay. And then we'll be doing a poll in December for what you guys want for January and or February. Yeah. Okay? So be watching for that. And then I also think at some point here, maybe we should do it before Christmas. I think we need to beef up our audience here.
Our
participation and our audience. So we may be doing a challenge or a contest of some sort on our page. So watch for that. And it will just involve nothing monetary. You have to do. This is free. But just engagement wise, you know, we may be doing a challenge for, you know, who can comment the most on things, or who can, you know, we're going to do some fun stuff like that because we need to up our Facebook algorithm, guys. Okay? And get us some new peeps in here. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Yes.
And we will see you again in December.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. That's the tall and the short of it.